I'm at my limit. Please, you have to say something to him. I couldn't take it anymore. What? Out of nowhere? It's not out of nowhere. I've asked you so many times before. You should have told him already. I begged my husband to ask his younger brother to move out. You want me to kick out my own brother when he has nowhere to go? How can you say that? Exactly, you're so heartless. My husband's mother suddenly jumped in. Both of them were acting like I was the bad guy. This is my story about dealing with a difficult family member. My name is Shirley. I married my husband, Charles, when I was 28. It was an arranged marriage, set up by my boss, who thought we'd be a good match. I've loved karate since I was a child. Back when I was a student, I focused more on training than dating. Even after starting work, I didn't really think about marriage. Since I had never really been in love, I didn't know how to start a relationship. My boss was worried about me and introduced me to Charles, his good friend. My first impression of Charles was that he was a kind and gentle man. He worked as a government employee and seemed very calm. I wanted to get married before turning 30, so when he asked me out, I quickly agreed. We got along well, and before long, we fell in love. What I liked most about him was his honesty and kindness. I thought we could have a good life together. When he proposed, I happily said yes. My parents are wealthy and own several vacation homes. As a wedding gift, they let me choose one. You can pick any house you like, they said. I chose a house that was just right, not too big, not too small. It had space for a future child, a garden, and was close to stores and public transport. It was perfect. Charles, who usually doesn't show much emotion, was amazed. Wow, this is incredible. Are you sure it's okay for us to have such a nice house? He said, looking a little guilty. Our happy life together was about to begin. I never doubted it for a second. Our wedding went smoothly, and we started our new life together. But just a few months later, Charles's father passed away after struggling with a long illness. Charles had a younger brother, but I had barely seen him. He worked at a factory in the suburbs, so I only met him at our wedding and then again at his father's funeral. After their father's passing, Charles's mother was left alone. Charles started calling her more often, and soon, she began visiting us regularly. I understood that Charles felt responsible as the eldest son. It made sense that he was worried about his mother, but I was busy with work, and home was my only place to relax. So when I came home to find my mother-in-law sitting there like she belonged, I started feeling uneasy. One day, after months of the same routine, my husband said, "Hey, Shirley, what do you think about my mom moving in with us?" What? I was surprised. Why are you suddenly bringing this up? She already comes over all the time. He smiled like he had the best idea ever. It must be tiring for her to visit so often. Why not just let her live here? Wait a second, I said, trying to process his words. We have our own life to live. This house is too big for just the two of us, he argued. If she moves in, it'll be better for her. He wasn't really asking for my opinion. He had already made up his mind. I wasn't happy about it, but he kept saying he was worried about her being alone. Since he cared so much, I felt like I couldn't say no. Before I could even decide, my mother-in-law sold her house. Suddenly, I had no choice but to let her move in. I was upset with my husband for arranging this without talking to me first. We don't have a family home anymore, he said. She has nowhere else to go. At that point, I gave up arguing. After she moved in, life became mentally exhausting. She didn't outright mistreat me, but she criticized me a lot. "You are the wife," she would say. I hated it. "You married my son, so you should serve his family." She had very old-fashioned ideas. If I put work first, she'd say, "You're alive, act like it." She repeated this constantly. Because of this, I started staying late at work more often. I avoided home as much as possible. Her sarcastic comments annoyed me, but I found ways to deal with them. Life went on as usual, until something big happened. A few years later, my brother-in-law suddenly announced, "I'm quitting my job at the end of the year and moving back home." This shocked all of us, me, my husband, and my mother-in-law, but there was a problem. His childhood home was already sold. There was no place for him to return to. Angry, he blamed my husband and mother-in-law. "I didn't know you sold our house. Why did you do that without telling me?" My brother-in-law was the kind of guy people call trouble. He dressed flashy, spoke roughly, and had a bad attitude. Honestly, I never liked him and preferred to stay away. "I'm sorry," my husband told him. "I was worried about Mom living there alone, and we thought you planned to stay in your job for a long time." My husband tried to calm his brother down, but my brother-in-law shouted, "Oh, really? You think you can just decide everything? Take responsibility, you useless brother." He yelled at my husband. Even though my husband was the older brother, he froze at those words. He turned pale and just looked down, unable to say anything back. Before he passed away, my father-in-law had said, "If something happens to me, I leave everything to my wife." That was his decision. My brother-in-law had left home without a word, worked in the suburbs, and never sent money back. Did he really have the right to blame his mother and brother now? I thought so, but in the end, we couldn't find a solution. My brother-in-law ended up moving into our house under one condition: he had to leave once he found a new job. Of course, I wasn't happy about it. "I don't want your brother living here too. Ever since your mom moved in, our expenses have already gone up," I complained. "I'll make him leave once he gets a job, just put up with it for now," my husband said. I couldn't argue after that. I had no choice but to let him move in. At this point, I was already mentally exhausted, but things only got worse from here. The condition was that my brother-in-law could stay until he found a job. But 3 months passed, and he wasn't even trying. He didn't look at job listings, didn't go to interviews, he just spent his days lounging around. He stayed in his room, blasting loud music, or hogged the living room TV for hours. My stress kept piling up. And then, as soon as I came home from work, "Is dinner ready yet? Hurry up and do the laundry." He treated me like a maid. I couldn't take it anymore and complained to my husband. "Hey, can you do something about your brother? He treats me like a housekeeper." "Housekeeper? He thinks of you as his sister. He really likes you." My husband laughed. "What do you mean he likes me? He orders me around. I'm treated like a servant in this house." I was furious, but my husband just brushed it off. "Enough already, you're not his wife, but you are his sister-in-law, just deal with it, okay?" I was stunned. As long as I kept quiet and endured everything, my husband thought things would be fine. I gave up trying to argue. After that, I stopped complaining to my husband. Instead, I called my parents and vented to them. My mom and dad told me I could come home anytime if I needed to. Their words were the only thing keeping me going. But then, my brother-in-law did something terrible. One day, I came home from work and saw a fire truck parked in front of our house. Panicked, I ran toward it, only to be stopped by a firefighter standing behind a safety line. Several firefighters walked out of the house, while my husband and mother-in-law thanked them. "What happened?" I asked, watching the fire truck drive away. My husband glanced at his mother and hesitated, then he muttered, "My brother was smoking, and the cigarette butt caught fire." I was so shocked and angry that I raised my voice. They explained that a cigarette butt had started a small fire, and my mother-in-law panicked, calling my husband and the fire department. Then why didn't she call me? I had only found out because I came home at the right time. If I had come back later, would they have just kept quiet? I asked them, but they both stayed silent. Frustrated, I rushed to my brother-in-law's room and threw the door open. "You could at least knock," he snapped. I ignored him and looked around. A huge burn mark covered the carpet under his bed. The house had smelled of cigarettes ever since he moved in, which was already stressing me out, and now, my favorite carpet was ruined. I had reached my limit. I turned to my husband, my mother-in-law, and my brother-in-law. "I'm done, you need to say something." My husband looked startled. "What's wrong with you all of a sudden?" "It's not all of a sudden, I've told you many times before, you should have put your foot down." I begged my husband to make his brother leave. But he just sighed and said in a tired voice, "You want me to kick my brother out when he has nowhere to go? How can you say that when you're his sister-in-law?" "Yeah, you're his sister-in-law. How could you say something so heartless?" my mother-in-law added. They both acted like I was the bad guy. But why was I the one being blamed? This was my house, my father had given it to me. My mother-in-law and brother-in-law had moved in without asking. They had no right to act like they owned the place. For once, I refused to back down. "Get out of my house," I said. My husband glared at me. "You want my brother out? If you can't live with him, then you should leave." With that, he stormed off. My brother-in-law just smirked. I felt completely drained and went to my room. The next day, I came home from work, and my key wouldn't fit in the lock. I tried over and over, but it wouldn't turn. I rang the doorbell, no answer. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my husband. I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. I changed the locks on the house. I will let you back in after you get your head straight. That was the message from my husband. Ridiculous. If that's how he wanted to play it, fine, I'd leave. I went straight to my parents' house and told them everything. As I spoke, I watched my mother's face harden with anger. My father, normally calm, looked furious. Leave the rest to me, he said. Without hesitation, he contacted a lawyer. From that moment, everything moved quickly. A certified letter was sent, demanding alimony, a divorce, and an order for my husband to vacate my house. Then, a meeting was set up at the house, with the lawyer present. As soon as we sat down, my husband scoffed. Divorcing over something this trivial? This is ridiculous. He refused outright. I met his gaze and said, if you don't agree, I'll take this to court. At the mention of court, he immediately fell silent. But when we brought up the house, he raised his voice again. This is our home, I'm your husband, I have a right to it, too. He smirked, as if he'd won. The lawyer didn't even blink. You have no right to this house, he said plainly. The truth was, my father had given me the house before we were married. It was legally mine. It was never shared property. I watched as my husband, mother-in-law, and brother-in-law turned pale. They had assumed they would never be kicked out. Their faces told me everything. They had never even considered this possibility. Finally, my husband stammered, Shirley, maybe we should reconsider. The lawyer turned to me. What would you like to do? I didn't hesitate. I'm getting a divorce. My decision is final. At that, my husband slumped in his seat. He knew he had lost. The divorce was finalized, and they moved out. Now, I hear that Charles is struggling to pay the alimony. The three of them moved into a shabby apartment, far from the comfortable life they once enjoyed. My ex-mother-in-law and ex-brother-in-law, no longer free to live off someone else, became increasingly stressed. As for my ex-brother-in-law, I heard he got into a fight with some thugs and was arrested for assault. Not my problem anymore. I got my house back. I remodeled the room he used to live in, finally erasing the scorch marks that had haunted me. Now, my weekends are spent with my parents, who come over and stay with me. My home is peaceful. To thank the lawyer who helped me, I invited him to dinner. Since then, we've been meeting regularly, outside of legal matters. Maybe, one day, I'll get a second chance at a happy marriage. For now, I'm simply enjoying my freedom.